If we look back at the history of the Buddha's teaching, on Thading Yut night there were memories that stood out clearly. And among those moments, the most remarkable one was when the Blessed Buddha, the ruler of Magadha, King Ajatasattu, was asked a question about the fruits of the ascetic life, so the Buddha explained it. And that is how the Samanaphala Sutta came to be. If I had to give an estimate, I'd say it was about 260, maybe 30 plus years ago. The period of time that had passed was King Ajatasattu and the Blessed Buddha met again on the full moon night of Tazonman. In response to King Ajatasattu's question, the Blessed One delivered the Samanaphala Sutta. So that is why today is also marked as Samanaphala Day. For those who follow astrology, the night of the full moon in Tazonman is a time to observe how the constellations appear in full across the sky. So today, since all the stars have aligned, they mark it as the day for mixing medicines. That is just how it has been decided. From a worldly point of view, there is really nothing all that unusual about it. For Myanmar people today, with the belief that it is Herbal Medicine Day, it just so happens the Mazali tree buds are falling today too. Whether it is true or not, nobody has ever tested it, Whatever happens, we're still going to have to eat the Mazali flower salad. So then the special things about today are, if you look back at religious history, it is like a major turning point emerged. King Ajatasattu, he didn't just imprison King Bimbisara, his own father. He went so far as to plot and kill him, bringing upon himself the heavy karma of patricide. It was the night he finally felt remorse and went to see the Buddha, even though he hadn't planned to, and admitted his mistakes. You could say that, right? And just like that, every foolish thing he'd ever done, he confessed to the Blessed One and asked for forgiveness. He was accepted as a disciple, a follower of the Blessed Buddha. Among the kings of that era devoted to the Buddha, King Ajatasattu's devotion was truly remarkable, you could say. In the Buddha's teachings, the most important, the very first thing presented. And the Sangha jewel to King Ajatasattu stood guard over it, So that is why today I found myself reminiscing about those little memorable moments from Thading Yut night. In our lives, when it comes to Thading Yut night, the memories we've kept and how we've spent our lives doing things that truly matter is something we should all understand, right? Over 2,600 years. If we look back at the past and reflect on it, in the Buddha's teachings, there have been times when we've faced various difficulties and challenges, When the Buddha delivered this discourse on the fruits of the ascetic life, you can also estimate how old the Buddha was at that time. When King Ajatasattu ascended the throne, the Buddha was already 72 years old. The delivery of the Samanaphala Sutta is estimated to have taken place sometime after he was 72, around 75, but before reaching 80 according to scholars. Since this discourse is extremely long, let's just wrap it up briefly today. In the discourse on the fruits of the ascetic life, the little points worth noting, make a special note of them and take them in with reverence. The Blessed One, Near the city of Rajagaha, he was spending the rains retreat at Jivaka's Mango Grove Monastery. Jivaka's Mango Grove Monastery is not far from King Bimbisara's Veluvana Monastery. And the city, it is situated about halfway between the city and Veluvana Monastery. Jivaka went to the Blessed One to check on his health and ended up caring for him as the Blessed One was getting on in years. To make travel easier, he built a monastery right in his mango grove and offered it to the Blessed One. That was during the time the Blessed One was spending the rains retreat in that mango grove. On a big full moon night like this, during the Tazonman festival. So, on the full moon night of Tazonman, how did the reason for going to see the Buddha come about? King Ajatasattu imprisoned his own father, a devoted follower of the Buddha. After believing Devadatta's words in the end, he even went so far as to have him killed. From the moment he committed the act, the days he spent consumed by regret and unable to find peace grew more and more numerous. In the end, a monk Devadatta who had urged and pushed him, who had advised him also, finally felt remorse and wanted to confess to the Blessed One. But when he came to do so, he couldn't get the chance to meet the Buddha, and instead, right there in Jetavana Monastery, the earth swallowed him up and he died. At that moment, King Ajatasattu grew even more terrified and shaken. On top of feeling guilty for having plotted and killed his father, King Bimbisara, he also witnessed the tragic end of his trusted ally and revered teacher, the monk Devadatta, and his heart was gripped with fear and dread. At night, I couldn't get a good night's sleep and went through countless restless nights. I just had to endure them. That is how it is. A person who has committed wrongdoing and bad deeds is constantly tormented by a burning conscience, knowing they've made such a grave mistake that it is impossible to undo or make right a serious wrong they have already committed. On the full moon day of Tazonman, the stars fill the sky and the moon shines incredibly bright. For King Ajatasattu, the idea of sleeping alone was something he really disliked. If he ever had to sleep and rest alone, all those burning thoughts and the shivers of fear in his heart would start creeping in. If everyone were to read world history, they'd surely come across events like this. Behind the assassination plot were terrifying, frightening things that seemed to follow him around, constantly haunting him. At that moment, when the ruthless king suddenly felt a wave of joy, it was as if people had surrounded him and were striking him with spears, making his heart pound and filling him with a deep, chilling fear. He screamed in fright, and the guards nearby asked, "Your Majesty, what happened? What happened?" Feeling embarrassed to explain, he just said nothing happened. Because of those nights when he got all scared and nervous and ended up shouting, he no longer wanted to sleep at night. He gets creeped out at the thought of having to sleep. So on a big full moon night in the month of Tazonman, he'd invite the ministers over, then sit up on the grand moon viewing pavilion in the palace courtyard, chatting away. And it really helped him unwind. And right then, King Ajatasattu spoke, expressing the excitement he felt inside. He lifted his gaze and looked up at the sky. The weather on the full moon day of Tazonman marks the end of the light rains. And in the lakes and ponds, the 5 kinds of lotus flowers are all in full bloom, making it an incredibly elegant and beautiful time. From what he said, it was indeed such a wonderfully pleasant night. That sinless night was so beautiful, it was worth remembering. And then he said right there among the ministers, on such a pleasant and beautiful night, I wonder what kind of monk or Brahmin could speak the Dhamma to bring peace to my heart, and who I should approach for that. For someone whose heart is trembling in fear, it is only natural to hope for someone who can say something to calm and reassure them. At that moment nearby, the ministers who were sitting around chatting started chiming in one after another. Your Majesty Purana Kassapa is already well advanced in age and has a huge following of disciples. He is also someone who has established his own doctrines, and everyone recognizes him as a truly virtuous and noble teacher. Why don't we go and approach Purana Kassapa? If we do, Your Majesty might find some peace of mind. That is what I think. But King Ajatasattu didn't budge. Why? Because he'd already been to see Purana Kassapa before. Then one of the ministers who followed Makali spoke up, saying that if you went to see Makali Gosala, you'd find peace of mind. The king didn't respond. To go visit Ajita Kasakambala, Pakuda Kakayana, Niganta Nataputta, and Sanjaya Beladaputta, the famous and well-known religious leaders of that time. When the devoted ministers of each faith came forward to present their teachers to the king, King Ajatasattu didn't move at all. But right next to King Ajatasattu, the royal physician Javaka just sat there quietly without saying a word. While the rest of the ministers were talking about the merits and kindness of their teacher in connection with the offering, Javaka just sat there completely still, without moving a muscle. Feeling a bit frustrated about that, King Ajatasattu said to Minister Javaka, "Why is that, Javaka?" So he asked his friend, "Why are you so quiet?" Javaka isn't talking, but I really want Javaka to speak. He is saying this not for any other reason. It is just that when he went to see other religious leaders, he didn't feel any spiritual inspiration. I want to go see the Blessed One. So when he said, "If you want to go, why don't you just go?" he became hesitant about going. Why was he so reluctant? The things he has been doing were in collaboration with Devadatta, and since Devadatta was opposing the Buddha, he supported him. So of course if he were to meet the Buddha, he'd feel embarrassed. Back in the day, he went all out in opposition. He was also involved when they sent 4 boys to assassinate the Buddha. He was also the one who got the Nalagiri elephant drunk and released it on the road where the Buddha would be coming for alms. Among those who supported and encouraged Devadatta, Ajatasattu was involved in all of Devadatta's violent acts, so it was difficult for him to meet the Blessed One. He just couldn't bring himself to face the Buddha. Well, what I really want is to go see the Buddha. He has already met with the quiet, reserved religious leaders, but he still hasn't met the Blessed One, Gautama Buddha. So he wants to go. Well then, Your Majesty, in my mango grove, the Blessed One, together with 1,250 monks, is currently spending the rains retreat there. That revered Buddha possesses these noble qualities. So if Your Majesty goes there to pay your respects, you'll surely feel a deep sense of joy and peace. Since the king wanted to hear those words, he said, "Well then, let's all go," and immediately gave the order to get things ready. Javaka immediately said, "If we're going to use elephants, then give the order for all 500 at once and have them prepared for the procession. We'll go to the Blessed One with the elephants." When asked why they chose elephants, it is because elephants walk quietly, but horses, their hoofbeats are incredibly loud. And if you traveled with 500 horses, the noise from their hooves would be deafening. It is better to travel by elephant during the quiet, peaceful nights. To keep the king safe, he rode on elephants as part of the royal guard. Instead of men, only older women dressed in ceremonial attire rode on the elephants, each carrying their own weapon and taking part in the mission, while the men stayed on the sides as bodyguards. For the king to stay safe, heading out beyond the city walls at night was something incredibly dangerous for kings. Because there were so many enemies, security for going out at night was kept extremely tight under Master Javaka's arrangements. He was also a minister, and since he had grown up in the royal court, he was responsible for the king's safety. If anything were to happen, Javaka would be the one who took the king out of the city, and he couldn't bear to hear people say the king suffered because of him. So that is why he carefully carried out the plan. To make it really bright, they used torches back in those days. They would hold big torches so that even if someone tried to throw something at the king from far away, it wouldn't reach him because he was surrounded by layers of protection. Sometimes as many as 500 guards all around. So that no one could tell where the king was, they surrounded him with elephants. And the king went to pay his respects to the most venerable Buddha on the night of the full moon of Chazonman. When they traveled like that, they arrived near Javaka's garden. When we arrived, what happened next was Javaka said that in his mango grove, the Blessed One was spending the rains retreat together with 1,250 monks. But all the way to the mango grove, there was no sound, no shadow, no sign of people at all. It was completely quiet and still. Just think about it, whether they're ordinary people or monks. A number like 1,250 is definitely not small. So normally you'd hear coughs, footsteps, movement, and people talking. But right now you can't hear any of that at all. When there was no sound and Javaka happened to be right near the king, King Ajatasattu started to feel uneasy deep inside. He started to feel uneasy because the king wasn't the type who liked quiet and calm. He much preferred noise and commotion. And with his harsh temper and proud, domineering ways, that was how things usually went. When he got outside, the quietness made him feel a little uneasy, and a thought crossed his mind. Did Javaka bring me here to hand me over to my enemies? Did they trick me by saying there is a Buddha here just to get me to come? I, without thinking, took his hand and let him lead me. Now we're at the edge of the garden, and I can't hear a single sound. The thought that maybe I'd been deceived crossed my mind, and the king became afraid. He began to sweat again. There is no such thing as a person who is never afraid. So then King Ajatasattu became very frightened and started sweating again. Right next to him he said to Javaka, "What is going on, my friend Javaka? I am not lying to you, you know. You didn't bring me here to hand me over to the enemy, right? And then you said there were 1,250 monks, you said. Can't you hear anything at all? Can't you see anything either? Is it all covered in darkness or what?" When he said that, the Venerable Javaka spoke up. "My lord, don't be afraid, don't be afraid. I am not deceiving you, and you are not in the enemy's hands. The Blessed One is here. Go ahead, take a look. Over there, you saw that little light, didn't you? Inside that little light over there, in the big building called the Mandala Marla, the Buddha, and the monks are right now sitting and listening to the Dhamma. The monks are listening to the Blessed One give a sermon. Your Majesty, you'll see it for yourself. I am not lying." When I gave him some words of encouragement, he perked right back up. When he arrived at the royal garden, he got down from the elephant and, along with his attendants, went to where the Blessed One was staying for the rains retreat. So I went over there, and at that moment I saw them sitting with a small light lit, just sitting there. All I could see were monks. King Ajatasattu asked, "Where is he, Javaka? My friend Javaka, where is the Blessed One?" "Your Majesty, if you look inside that building with the lights on, you'll see him leaning against the central pillar, with monks gathered behind him and sitting right in front of them. That is the Blessed One himself. So then, Your Majesty, you can go with peace of mind truly, without any worries." So, about how the Blessed One was seated inside that large circular-shaped building. He was sitting with his back against the central pillar, facing east. The monks were sitting behind the Blessed One, surrounding him from the back. King Ajatasattu and his royal entourage, who had come to pay respects to the Blessed One, stood leaning against the eastern wall, facing toward the Blessed One in the west. They sat in a circle around him, with the Blessed One seated right at the center of his audience. And just like that, when King Ajatasattu came near the Blessed One, as he came before the Blessed One, he was dazzled and overwhelmed. He couldn't bring himself to suddenly speak to the Buddha. Well, it is because the sins he had committed were unbelievably great. He plotted and killed King Bimbisara, a devoted lay follower and true supporter of the Blessed One. He supported and encouraged the monk Devadatta, who was opposing the Buddha. Following Devadatta's orders, he sent 4 men to kill the Buddha. He planned to release the great Nalagiri elephant to attack the Buddha. Realizing he had been involved in all these acts, his heart trembled and shook with fear, and he couldn't bring himself to speak to the Blessed One. Without saying a word, the monks sat there in complete silence. Not a single one moved or showed any sign of restlessness. And the monk seated behind the Blessed One remained calm and still. When he looked, he thought to himself and muttered, "If only my son Prince Urayabhadra could be as calm and composed as these monks, how wonderful that would be." That is what I was thinking. So why is that? Well, it is because he wants his little boy to be well behaved. That is probably just the mindset of mothers and of parents in general. Just like how monks live calmly and with discipline, he wants his son to be that calm too. Since he himself had murdered his father, he thought that if his son didn't stay calm and disciplined, one day the boy might end up killing him too. So if my son could be someone disciplined like these monks, that would be really great. When he finally spoke, the Blessed One said to the king, hoping to put his mind at ease, "Gamanuka Maharaja, as it is, how is it? Your Majesty, are you feeling love and devotion toward your beloved son?" When the Blessed One greeted him like that, only then did he respond. He was so happy, he actually managed to speak. "Yes, my lord, I love and cherish my son Udayabhadra very much. If my boy were to become calm and disciplined like the monks here, I think that would be truly wonderful." When I said it like that, the words just came out on their own. His fear toward the Blessed One began to fade, and because of the Blessed One's warmth, smiling face, and great compassion, he felt a deep sense of peace, Your Majesty. When he felt that way, only then did he bow 3 times to the Blessed Buddha, and then place his palms together in respect toward the monks. What is worth noting here is, why is it that they bow 3 times only to the Buddha, and then simply put their palms together for the monks? Well, the reason is because the Buddha is supreme. Well, since the Buddha is the highest and most revered figure, we only bow 3 times to him. If you were to bow 3 times to the other monks as well, it would seem like you are not giving the Buddha the proper respect. So for this most revered person, we show deep respect. And after that, for the others, we simply acknowledge them politely with a small gesture of respect by putting our hands together. That is just the natural way of things. So when they go to see the senior monks, some people who remember these kinds of teachings will bow and pay full respects to the senior monks. But after that, if there are other monks nearby, they'll just put their hands together in a small gesture. Well, after turning your back to the senior monk, you don't bow to any of the other monks. Let's say you are going up to the Shwedagon pagoda, and while you are bowing to the great sacred pagoda, you've already got your back turned to the Buddha images behind you. That is actually considered a respectful posture, But really, things like that shouldn't happen. When you are bowing 3 times to the Buddha and there are statues right behind you, that is not an appropriate situation. Yeah, but since it's already set up that way, there is nothing anyone can do about it. When you bow to the Buddha statue in front, you automatically end up turning your back on the statue behind. It was the same back in the old days. If you are near such a revered person and someone less revered comes along, you shouldn't be showing that kind of respect to them. Let's say the lay follower named Satapani was sitting near the Blessed One before King Kasala arrived, paying his respects and honoring the Buddha. At that moment when the king arrived, if we put it in today's terms, people would be quick to jump up and go greet the newcomer. But Satapani, the lay follower, didn't get up to greet the king when he arrived. The reason he didn't get up to greet the king was because the Buddha is far more exalted. And if he went to greet the king, it could make it seem like the king was held in higher regard than the Buddha. So that is why he didn't go out to greet the king. He only showed respect to the Buddha and no one else. Because of that, the king wasn't happy, not happy at all. Even nowadays, some people will be sitting and listening to a sermon in front of senior monks, and when someone from the audience arrives from the back, they get up to greet them. But honestly, that is something you really shouldn't do. If you are already in the presence of someone you should be showing respect to, no matter who comes in afterwards. Unless it is someone of higher standing than that senior monk, then yes, you should get up to greet them. And the senior monk himself should also get up to greet them. If you greet someone who isn't of higher status than him, then it is like you are not showing respect to this venerable monk, and instead you are giving that respect to the person who came later, which they say is actually disrespectful. Looking at the Satapani story, he didn't show any respect when the king arrived. Why? Because he was in front of the Buddha, and he wouldn't cut off his respect for the Buddha to go and give priority to the king. But the king wasn't happy, while the person who understood was fine with it. The king wasn't happy because he didn't know about this custom. So the Blessed One stepped in, looked at the king's face, and realized that he was displeased with this person. The Blessed One explained that this lay follower had mastered all three parts of the Tipitaka and was an Anagami lay follower, and personally introduced him as such. Only then did the king calm down. Well, things can happen like that too, you know. However, what Satapani, the lay follower, did was the right thing. The Buddha, that means he was right. This is what we call human culture. But not everyone understands this thing we call human culture. So when you are in front of someone you should respect. This is something you really have to be mindful of. That is why King Ajatasattu didn't go around paying respects to the monks. With my hands clasped together, I respectfully and reverently addressed the Blessed One. My Lord, Lord, if you would allow it, if you would permit me to address a matter, please allow me to ask one question. So then the Blessed One, he said, you may ask, you may ask. So when permission was given, what was the question? What he wants to know is why he felt the need to ask this question at all. He also wants his young son to be as calm and composed as a monk's. He wants him to become virtuous. What he is thinking is that people in this world get to experience the benefits of knowledge firsthand. So, for those who enter the monastic order and become monks, do they have benefits? They can show here and now. For the most part, in those days, people understood that practicing virtuous conduct was a way to secure a good rebirth in the next life. Most people understood it that way. It is not about living well in this life. It is about living well in the next life, about reaching a good, fortunate rebirth. There is a long-standing tradition around that. So yeah, that could be why this question came up. This question could have come up. Back in the Buddha's time, when people entered the monastic order, if their husbands had joined, how do you think the women felt about it? They thought that in their next life they'd become 500 or even 1,000 celestial maidens and reach the heavenly realm. So they ordained for that reason. That is just what people in their time believed. So that is why King Ajatasattu said to the Blessed One, Lord, there are people in the world who are skilled in various arts, right? They make their living by relying on those various skills. So the question is, Lord, could you tell your disciple what benefits a person can actually gain from becoming a monk after giving up worldly business and truly living the monastic life? That is why I am asking this. So, becoming a monk, what kind of benefits does it actually bring in this life? Is that why people choose to ordain? He asked that because he wanted to know. The Blessed One paused to think, and at that moment when the question was asked, he didn't answer right away. When they came to see the Blessed One and gathered around the king's audience, a great many followers from other faiths had also joined in. When they came along like that, it meant all sorts of answers could come out. The Blessed One asked, "Great King, where have you asked this question before?" When asked, "Do you remember?" the Venerable One replied, "Yes, Lord, I have asked that question before. I have asked the ascetics and Brahmins before." So when asked if they had ever been questioned about it and whether they could explain how they answered, they said, "It is no trouble at all, Lord." And when asked if they could explain it right here before the Blessed One, they replied, "Yes, we can." So then he said, "Go ahead and tell us." Once upon a time, Makali Gosala, when he went to see Purana Kassapa, he began recounting his experiences. King Ajatasattu asked, "Since this sutta is quite long, I'll just tell you enough, so the story still makes sense." It is said that once he went to see Purana Kassapa. When he got there, he just asked this one question. When he was asked Purana Kassapa, well, what did he say? He answered by explaining his major Akyuriyavada doctrine. The question was whether he could explain the benefits of becoming a monk in this very life. But according to his Akyuriyavada doctrine, he said it can't be done. Merit can't be done. Demerit can't be done. That is the big Akyuriyavada doctrine he held. That is the answer he supposedly gave, because he gave that answer. If you ask how I felt inside, it was like planting a mango tree but ending up with a plum tree. But still, I would never drive someone out of my country. I wouldn't drive someone out of my country. Even though he didn't like the answer, the disciple just kept quiet and left right then and there. That is how it was. The next time Makali Gosala was asked, I also wondered what his answer would be. If samsara goes on long enough, it'll eventually end on its own. When the total reaches 84,000 lifetimes, everyone will have reached the end of their journey, according to the doctrine of samsara purification. He was asked about the benefits of becoming a monk, but instead of answering that, he went off explaining his grand idea about samsara purification. He was basically answering a mango tree question with a plum tree answer. And when asked a plum tree question, he replied with a mango tree answer, the answer, and the question were totally mismatched. In the disciple's mind, he thought, oh, couldn't he have just given a straight answer instead of dodging it? It wouldn't be right for me to drive out a monk like this who is living in my country. And with that, without showing any joy, acceptance, or objection, he simply got up and went back to his place. So when the Blessed One went around asking these questions to all 6 senior teachers who held wrong views, they couldn't give the right answer. They just kept pushing their own doctrine to the forefront and spoke from that. Finally, when Venerable Siriputta went to ask the great teacher, Sajjaya Prabhijaka, the one their own teacher had once studied under, what did Sajjaya Prabhijaka say? It was the evasive Amara Vikipa doctrine, dodging every question without giving any real answer. Whatever you ask, no matter what it is, he just dodges the question. If you ask whether it is merit, he wouldn't say it is merit either. So then it is not merit, right? Well, he wouldn't say it is not either. And so when he explained it using that kind of evasive, non-committal Amaravikapa doctrine that never gives a clear answer to anything, feeling dissatisfied, King Ajatasattu made a remark. Among these ascetics and Brahmins, Sanjaya Belataputta, yes, Sanjaya Belataputta, this teacher was, in my mind, the most ignorant of them all. When asked why, well, he just couldn't give any kind of clear answer at all. So then the disciple went to those senior teachers in the group and asked them these questions. But he didn't get any answer from them, since he couldn't get an answer that satisfied him. Now, so he said, I'll just ask this question to the Blessed One, and went ahead and did so. And then the Blessed One gave him an answer. Well then, if that is the case, Just answer however your majesty prefers. In your majesty's kingdom, there was a man serving the king as both a loyal subject and a humble servant. One of your servants working close to the king. One day he started thinking, King Adasatu is just a man, and I am just a man too. Well, he gets to live a comfortable, easy life, but me, I am stuck doing all his chores. My life is really lowly. So to escape from this kind of lowly life, I'll have to do good deeds and earn merit. Even if I do good deeds with just ordinary merit, I'll never reach his level. I'd have to enter the monastic order, become a monk, and practice the Dhamma. So, thinking that way, a royal servant left the king's side and departed. Let's just say he joins the monastic order and becomes a monk. When he becomes a monk like that, he lives righteously and practices the Dhamma diligently. Someone will probably come and inform His Majesty the King. If I, your humble servant, were to leave and become a monk and live the monastic life practicing the Dhamma, then how would your majesty decide? If you came back to me and returned to lay life, would I call you to keep working for me? Lord, they said they wouldn't call me back like that. Not only did they not call him back, they even gave him the care and support reserved for a disciple and promised to help provide the 4 basic necessities he might need. Well then, if that is the case, does his monastic life have any benefit or not? You decide, your majesty. So hearing that, he agreed, saying, yes, that would be beneficial, Lord. This is something the Blessed One made very clear and easy to see. If someone enters monastic life, then someone who used to serve the king's affairs not only no longer has to do that work, but even receives the king's respect. That is a real tangible benefit right there. In the same way, Blessed One, please give another example like that, your lordship. Continuing to deal with these heavy taxes and levies, a farmer who makes his living through agriculture. He thinks to himself, King Ajatasattu is a king, and I am a king too. King Ajatasattu is a person, and I am a person too. He is incredibly wealthy, me. Well, I am incredibly poor. I am stuck carrying the burden of his taxes. So with my ordinary life, there's no way I could ever reach his level. So I guess I'll just have to do good deeds too. If doing good deeds means it is even better to enter the monkhood and practice the teachings, then I'll put on the robes and become a monk. Wouldn't your majesty call that person back? Have him return to work on the royal farmlands, and then after he is done, start paying taxes to me again? Wouldn't you say something like that? No, I wouldn't say that, Lord. As your disciple, I'll make sure you can live happily in the monastic life, and I'll provide support, the 4 requisites, and even protection for you. So in that case, does the monastic life actually have benefits or not? Well, your majesty, it is up to you to decide. So in that case, yes, it is beneficial. So then the king adds on, Lord, could you tell us about the benefits of the monastic life that are even greater than this? Well, of course, the Blessed One could explain that. Let's just say the monastic life has far more noble benefits than this. In this world, a Buddha has arisen. When you happen to live in a time when the Buddha has appeared, they go to the Buddha and listen to the teachings of the Dhamma. When they happen to encounter the time of the Buddha's appearance, they go to him to listen to his teaching. So when they listen like that, what happens? They start to gain faith. So that is just how the world is. Back in the era of the Blessed One, Anathapindika, the wealthy merchant, after building the great Jetavana monastery for the exalted Buddha, they invited him to come to the city of Sivathi. When he arrived, the Blessed One gave a sermon of appreciation at the water sprinkling ceremony for Jetavana monastery in the city of Sivath. When they listened to the sermon, the people there were filled with deep faith. Subhuti, a younger brother of the wealthy merchant Anathapindika, became so deeply inspired by the teachings of faith and virtue that he gave up family life and entered the Blessed One's order to follow the Buddha's dispensation. There were many cases like this, They gave up family life and entered the monastic order. In the same way, when people heard the Buddha's teachings, they realized that to live by such noble truths and practice such lofty virtues Well, it just wasn't possible to keep living a family life. It is extremely pure. You have to live by such pure conduct. Human life, as we know it, is extremely narrow, restrictive, and confining. The monastic life is, just like the open plains, incredibly free. After switching to monastic life, we came to realize that only by practicing noble conduct could we truly succeed. Many people have completely let go of family life and entered the monastic order. In the same way, the Blessed One gave an example. When the Buddha attained enlightenment and began teaching, people listened to the Dhamma, and by listening they developed faith. Once that faith arose, they gave up worldly life and renounced it. Whether they had little wealth or a lot, many relatives, or just a few, they gave up everything and entered the monastic life. After entering the monastic order like that, you might wonder, what are the practices and principles you have to work hard at and devote yourself to in monastic life? The very first principles to practice and put effort into are the rules of moral conduct. As soon as they enter monastic life, they immediately strive to perfect their moral conduct. For example, the Padimaka Sangvara Sila, the major training rules laid down by the Blessed One. They avoid sexual relations, yes, any kind of intimate relationship from the very start. They avoid stealing other people's belongings. They avoid major acts of killing and also steer clear of deceitful speech. By avoiding those things, they go on to practice and strive for truly noble conduct. By putting in that kind of effort, they strive to fully and completely uphold moral conduct. So when they make that effort, what benefits do people with complete moral integrity gain? Well, it is what is called blameless happiness. A person with perfect moral conduct keeps their actions and intentions pure, so they don't commit any wrong in speech or in physical deeds. Because you haven't committed any wrongdoing, when you reflect on your own moral conduct, you feel a deep sense of joy and contentment inside. So it is that kind of happiness that comes from being free of any wrongdoing, what they call anavajja sukha. To experience that blameless happiness, people first practice and put effort into cultivating moral discipline. Yes, that is right. A person who has become complete in moral conduct. To make moral conduct strong and steady, the next thing to keep practicing is called indriya samvara, or sense restraint. You need to guard and take care of your senses. When your eyes see something, make sure it doesn't lead to greed or anger. With the sounds you hear, be careful not to let greed or anger arise. The nose detects smells. Taste with the tongue, feel with the body, and when imagining or planning, make sure greed or anger doesn't arise. Taking care of yourself and keeping yourself in check. Regarding the sensations that enter through the six sense doors, the guarding against unwholesome states known as indriya samvara is a tremendous help in keeping moral conduct safe. If you don't guard them like this, the moral discipline you've been keeping could soon break down and be lost. That is why the practice of guarding and protecting the senses through indriya samvara should be continued with steady effort and dedication. All right, so if you protected and safeguarded your senses and they're secure now, what benefits does that bring? The bliss of liberation. That kind of peace keeps greed from entering your heart, and anger doesn't arise either. It is not the kind of happiness that comes from being driven by defilements. Sometimes people get greedy, but the happiness that comes from greed never really appears. And some people actually feel a kind of pleasure when they get angry. When you get angry and then win, that little feeling of satisfaction comes up. I am not saying that getting angry makes you happy. If you beat the other person, even someone with a hot temper ends up feeling pleased. Even hot-tempered people enjoy it too. So it is not the happiness mixed with defilements from defeating others, but rather the peace and joy completely free from any defilements. Morality is secure. Indriya samvara also means being able to protect and safeguard the sense doors, keeping them safe. Then moving up to the next level of practice, it is about mindfulness and clear awareness. You stay mindful even when eating. You stay mindful in the places you go and come from. You are mindful even when getting dressed. In the end, everything that comes into your hands, you've been mindful of it from the start. From the moment you start speaking, or even when staying quiet, you are mindful all the way through. When you act with mindfulness and careful reflection, you have full awareness. Next, there is santuti, being content with what you have. That contentment with what you have, that calm and steadiness, that is really overcoming greed. So this point is also an important one. For a monk, the 4 basic qualities he needs to be complete are, what are they? Morality, restraint of the senses, mindfulness and clear comprehension, and contentment. These 4 must be complete. The scriptures say that without these 4 being complete, monks shouldn't establish a forest monastery. You can't go live in the forest without them. At the very least, you need these 4. So people going to a meditation retreat should also have these 4. Only with those 4 can you keep the precepts. You need the ability to guard and protect your senses. You need mindfulness and clear awareness. You need calm determination. If you don't have them, then when people come into the retreat camp from home with things like fish paste dip or other food and drinks, what will they do? They bring all the cooked dishes along at once. Over there, they cook only the tastiest dishes, or the retreat feeds you well and you eat. With things like that, it is hard to gain any Dhamma benefit, isn't it? That is why monks strive to fulfill these 4 points. After making that effort, what should you do next? If you've got these 4 things complete, then you head off alone to a quiet forest monastery. After leaving, I went to forest monasteries and meditation centers and devoted myself to practicing the Dhamma. So if someone asks, what does it mean to practice the Dhamma? It is about removing the mental impurities known as the hindrances. Envara means something that blocks you from generating merit. It is something that is blocking you. Right now, if cars are stuck in Yangon City, you wouldn't be able to get there on time. Right? That is a traffic jam. Yeah, it is basically blocked. Just like that, there are also certain things in the mind that block you from doing good deeds. So what are those things? Well, they're sensual desires. I want to look at something beautiful. I want to listen to some pleasant sound. I feel like eating something tasty. Wanting to smell something nice, or wanting to sleep in a really comfy bed. Those kinds of things are called sensual desires. It is about removing that defilement called sensual desire, then cleansing and purifying the mind, and keeping watch over yourself so those things don't arise in your heart. And then the next one is vyapada, ill will, things that you don't want or don't like. By removing those mental states of ill will, we can make sure no living being experiences that kind of dislike. We should let a heart full of loving kindness, wishing well for everyone, completely embrace all beings. By letting your mind be filled with loving kindness, you have to cleanse and remove the hindrance called ill will from within yourself, from within your own mind. Next, when you've gotten rid of what is called sloth and torpor, you won't end up feeling that lack of energy in your mind, We need to make an effort to shine a light and encourage ourselves so that any kind of dull, unmotivated state disappears and our mind becomes lively and energized. Next, for what is called udaka kuka, that restless, unsettled, uneasy state of mind, you've got to work on strengthening your concentration so your mind stays calm and steady. Next, you've also got to make the real effort to get rid of that doubt, that mental state they call visikich. Putting effort into the practice basically means working to remove the hindrances, So that is what it means, So how do you get rid of them? Well, you do it with the power of concentration. When you remove them with the power of concentration, the hindrances fade away and disappear. If you ask what those hindrances are like, well, sensual desire is like being in debt. A person who is in debt has to pay it off. They can never really find peace of mind. A person who has sensual desire is, well, just like someone in debt. They've always got something they need to pay off, So then, if you ask what ill will is like, well, it is like a disease. A person who is sick is not the same as someone who is healthy. They're always mentally distressed. And a person who is angry is also suffering inside just the same. So ill will is kind of like a disease. Now, another one is what is called thinamitta. That is when a person is constantly sleepy, sluggish, and just dragging through life. And when it comes to the Dhamma, they just don't gain any insight at all. A person's state of mind also lacks clarity and openness. So it is kind of like being someone who is stuck in prison. They say the mind hasn't become fresh or clear at all. So that is why you have to get rid of thinamida. Yudhishaka kuka well to me. So what does it actually resemble? A person living like a servant to someone else has to do whatever that person wants. It is like they have no life of their own, you know. It is as if you don't have your own life. You just live the way they want, doing everything to please them, like someone completely under their control. In the same way, a person whose mind is restless has no peace of heart and no sense of freedom at all. If you ask what doubt is like, I'd say it is like being on a long, lonely journey through the wilderness. A person traveling through the wilderness is constantly filled with uncertainty, wondering where they'll end up, who they might run into, or what challenges they might face along the way. A person caught in doubt is just like someone traveling a long, uneasy road, moving forward with a nervous, jittery feeling all the way. So if you can remove these 5 hindrances, it is like the joy of someone finally free from debt. The joy of someone who is debt-free. The joy of someone in good health. The joy of someone just released from prison. The joy of someone freed from a life of slavery. The joy of someone who has made it through a long, grueling journey across the wilderness and finally returned to their own hometown and home. That is the kind of joy being described here. The Blessed One explained that when those hindrances are removed, the power of concentration begins to arise. The very first experience you'll have by practicing samatha meditation is reaching what is called the first jayachina, that special state of joy and happiness. The joy and happiness that arise from being free of the hindrances. They say you'll get to savor the taste of that joy and bliss. Next, when you deepen your concentration power, you'll experience the joy and bliss, what is called Pifadi Sukha, of the second jayachana. The bliss that comes from that level of concentration. When you deepen your concentration power further, you'll experience a calm and steady happiness, one without the thrill or excitement of joy. And then, when you deepen it once more, you'll experience that same peace, but now it is a calm, steady peace you can even let go of. This is the 4th jayachana. What it means is you've attained the first jayachana, then the second jayachana, then the third jayachana, and finally the 4th jayachana. That first jayachana I mentioned earlier, well, it is like when a servant or a farmer is freed from the burden of paying taxes to the king. That kind of relief, that kind of happiness. But even greater is one of the precious benefits of the monastic life. And that is how the Blessed One spoke. Attaining jayachana is really just one of the tangible everyday benefits of living the monastic life. The second jayachana, the third jayachana, and the 4th jayachana are also among the benefits of the monastic life. So is there something even better than this? Yes, there is. And what is that? I practice vipassana meditation with dedication and effort. That kind of dedicated effort in practicing vipassana meditation. First, I focus my attention on my own body, the big physical body I have. This body is made up of the 4 great elements. It is quite clear that the body is made up of the 4 great elements. I went ahead and broke down the whole body, examined it, and took a closer look. Blocks, chunks, the flesh, the muscles, and the bones are each separate things. And the skin, that is another. Heat and cold are another category. If we separate things into groups like air as one category, then the body is made up of these 4 great elements: earth, water, fire, and air. So then, what exactly was that whole body built upon? What was it based on? Material cause of conception. The human body came into being based on the physical materials from the mother and father, relying on what is called the ovum and the sperm. That body, that physical shell that was born in that way, grew day by day as it was nourished with food. And as it grew older, well, there is the loss of youth, the impermanence, the gradual aging, and in between all that, the trouble of having to massage it, take medicine, get injections, constantly working hard just to keep this body going. This big physical body, that little consciousness that depends on that big physical body, clearly discerning between that physical form and the mental phenomena, those two distinct aspects, is what is called vipassana insight. The Blessed One explained that gaining this vipassana insight is an exceptionally valuable benefit that can be practically applied in monastic life. Then he went on to continue speaking. When practicing a certain form of samatha meditation, you just follow your mind's focus. Yeah, just follow your mind's focus. And if your mind creates it, you can actually bring images into being. That ability to create, called the Manomadidi attainment, is also one of the practical benefits of the monastic life. Another one is the adivida abhiti, the power to create or manifest things using abilities like controlling the elements such as earth or rain. This too is one of the benefits of the monastic life. Another one is the divine ear hearing nearby sounds, distant sounds, even incredibly far off sounds. The divine ear ability, which lets you hear even extremely distant and faint sounds, is also one of the truly wonderful benefits of becoming a monk. Another one is the ability to read or know what is in someone's mind. Yeah, that too is one of the special benefits of monastic life. Another one is the ability to recall past lives, known as the knowledge of previous existences, and that too is one of the special benefits of monastic life. And then the divine eye, the vision of incredibly powerful beings, possessing the ability to see beyond. The Blessed One also said that the divine eye, Debakaku, was yet another noble and increasingly wonderful benefit that comes with monastic life. And after saying that, finally, there is what is called the knowledge of the destruction of the taints. When I focused on the body and practiced a vipassana meditation technique, in the end, what I came to realize was I came to truly understand what suffering really is. I truly understood the reality of suffering. I truly came to understand nibbana, the cessation of suffering. I came to truly understand the practice that leads to the cessation of suffering. When it is said that you've come to truly and correctly understand the noble truths, all four of them, at the same moment. If this natural truth called the Arahata Magga, the final stage of the path where all mental defilements are completely eliminated, has arisen within oneself, then there is no benefit from the monastic life greater than that. The Blessed One told King Ajatasattu that the benefits of the monastic life reach their ultimate fulfillment only at the stage of arahantship. Whether King Ajatasattu could actually demonstrate the benefits he could gain from the monastic life, the Blessed One explained the benefits attainable in this very life, delivering the Sama Afalasata on the full moon night of Tazonman. When the Blessed One gave that teaching, King Ajatasattu was deeply impressed by how complete and excellent the Buddha's explanation was. And so, feeling overjoyed and deeply reverent toward the Blessed One, he bowed his head in respect and declared that from this day forward he would be recognized as a lay devotee who follows and honors the Buddha's teachings. After making his pledge, the disciple of the Blessed One, well, because he was extremely foolish and utterly lacking in integrity, blinded by the desire for rank and power, the disciple plotted against and killed his own father, the king who had ruled justly according to the law. For that wrongdoing, the disciple admitted his guilt and asked the Blessed One for forgiveness. So when he made that request, what did the Blessed One say? Yes, doing something like this is not good, but still, in the Lord's final judgment, to see a wrongdoing exactly as it is, and then addressing the wrongdoing you've recognized in a fair and lawful way, and then guarding yourself so you won't do it again. Yeah, these 3 points, when they grow and develop, become one of the reasons you are freed from wrongdoing. That is how it is explained, So some people think that in the Buddha's final teachings, there is actually no method for being freed from wrongdoing. In some other religions, people believe you can just do whatever you want, then quietly go into a little room, make a confession, and your sins will be forgiven, something like that. According to the Buddha's teachings, just making a confession doesn't mean your sins are forgiven. Giving a sermon, well, it is not like giving a sermon in front of people. It is more like quietly going into a little room and making a confession. Some religions do it that way. So The Buddha's final verdict wasn't like that. First, you have to see a wrong as a wrong. According to the proper way of the Dhamma, you make amends. Meaning what? It means you confess, you apologize. That is what making amends is. Next time you've got to avoid it. These three things right here. If you follow and practice those 3 steps, you can be freed from this wrongdoing. If you ask, what does it mean to be free from it? Well, the reason is, once a wrongdoing has been committed, you can't just say, oh, I haven't done it yet. Once a wrongdoing has already been dealt with, it is gone. A mistake you've already made yourself is still a mistake, plain and simple. I am not fixing this mistake. I am acting, so I won't make another one again. This wrongdoing actually leads to 2 more issues. While I was working, I made 1 mistake, and then I started feeling uneasy about it, turning that 1 mistake into 2. Among those 2, the mistake made while working could no longer be fixed. Thinking back on that mistake made my heart uneasy and my mind unsettled. And instead of improving things, it only made them worse. So that is why no matter how many crimes you commit. The Blessed One's final teaching is that we must see wrongdoing as wrongdoing and see bad things as truly bad. Once you recognize it, you have to make amends. Meaning you have to protect and safeguard so it won't happen again in the future. If you can follow these 3 points, you can be free from wrongdoing. Where it says be freed, it means freed to a certain extent. In the end, if he were to attain arahantship, then all his wrongdoings would be completely gone, Yes, so that is why the Blessed One spoke to King Ajatasattu in this way. After the Buddha spoke, King Ajatasattu said, yes, my lord. We disciples had a lot of work to do, so after paying our respects to the Blessed One, we returned that very night. At that time, King Ajatasattu also left, and the Blessed One spoke to the monks. This king has already ruined himself. If at the moment he heard the ordinary Dhamma discourse answering today's question, he had not wronged or killed his father, then today he would have been a diva. But now, because he destroyed himself, he will no longer become a Sotaipana. He has missed the chance to remain as a divine Sotaipana. A good situation can end up ruined, The Blessed One said it had been ruined in that way. And in the Pali Canon, that is all it mentions. In the Athakatha, it goes beyond this, because he revered and worshipped the Blessed One instead of falling into a Vichy hell. Well, since it was personal karma, dying without delay would still bring its result. That is true. You just can't avoid it. It is Vanantarya karma. But for him to be freed from this life, after enduring 60,000 years in the Attara hell, the Athakatha records that in his next life as the Paksika Buddha named Visitavi, he would attain parinibbana. Yes, and so, dear devoted followers of the Dhamma, if we take tonight's regular observance day together with the memory of the Tazon Deng night, of the Tazonman full moon, and reflect on it, we'll see that the noble Buddha's teachings not only bring immense benefit, but also free us from the wrongs and misdeeds we've committed. If we can follow and practice diligently the path the Blessed Buddha clearly revealed and taught, we can free ourselves from the suffering and cycle of samsara. Even if we can't be completely free, may each of us find relief from suffering, cherish the memories of the Tazoman full moon night, and let good deeds and virtues arise within us. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. All right, let's send out loving kindness. May many beings be free from harm, and live in peace, live in peace. May many beings be free from harm, and live in peace, live in peace. May the cool waters of loving kindness be poured and sprinkled, so that all may be at peace, Long life and good health, peace of mind. May all your wishes come true, Long life and good health, peace of mind. May all your wishes come true, May the blossoms of happiness be filled with loving kindness and harmony, touching the hearts of all beings. so they may become fragrant and pure. May loving kindness be complete in harmony. Through the combined sending of loving kindness energy, the pure white radiance joining with the silver moon and shimmering rays, the complete and flawless radiance of all countless living beings. Within the great lake of pure, noble, and serenely clear waters, symbolizing the mind and heart in their fullness. Lotus blossoms of pure, cool, serene beauty blooming in peaceful joy. The so-called Kumudra lotuses open in delight and happiness, their petals gently scattering golden pollen in a scene that warms the heart. The fragrances drifting beneath the breeze, mingling with the wind, spreading gently, carrying a sweet delight that brings joy. May they stand firm and unwavering with strength and resilience.